Have you ever wondered how the Israel-Palestine conflict, one of the most enduring and controversial confrontations in recent history, came about? Nestled at the crossroads of Africa, Europe and Asia lies the geographical area known as the Levant. This region, rich in history and cultural diversity, is home to both Israel and Palestine. Our story begins in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The land, then under British control and known as Palestine, was a mosaic of cultures, religions and ethnicities. Among its population were Jews and Arabs, each with their own distinct identities and narratives, both laying claim to this historical and spiritual homeland. Jews, fleeing persecution and seeking a national homeland, began migrating to Palestine in larger numbers. The Zionist movement, advocating for a Jewish state in Palestine, was gaining momentum. Meanwhile, the Arab population, who had deep-seated roots in the land, viewed this increasing immigration with growing concern. The tension between these communities was not just about land, it was about identity, self-determination and survival. As the Jewish population grew, so did the apprehension among the Arab community. Disputes turned into skirmishes, and skirmishes turned into full-blown violence. The struggle for the same piece of land had begun. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, but it was rejected by the Palestinian Arab leadership and the Arab League. The partition plan was supposed to be a solution, a way to peacefully divide the land, but instead it marked a significant escalation in the conflict. The stage was set for a struggle that would shape the region for decades to come. Even after the United Nations partition plan of 1947, the conflict was far from over. The year 1948 marked a significant turning point in the Israel-Palestine conflict. This was the year of the War of Independence, or Nakba, a name that reflects the starkly different perspectives of the events that unfolded. The narrative of this war is a tale of two halves, each with its own realities and memories. On one side, the establishment of the State of Israel represented a beacon of hope for Jewish communities worldwide, a refuge after the horrors of the Holocaust. For Israeli Jews, the War of Independence symbolized their struggle for survival and legitimacy in a hostile neighborhood. The result was a newfound statehood, a home for a people long without one. On the other side, the story is different. For Palestinians, the year 1948 is remembered as the Nakba, or catastrophe. It marked the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes. Many were forced into exile, creating a Palestinian diaspora that stretches across the globe today. It was a year of profound loss of lives, loss of homes, and loss of a homeland. These diverging narratives of 1948 continue to shape the Israel-Palestine conflict. The establishment of Israel led to the first Arab-Israeli war, pitting the newly formed Jewish state against its Arab neighbors. The war ended with an armistice in 1949, but the peace was uneasy and temporary. The borders drawn were considered armistice lines rather than final borders, leaving the door open for future conflicts. In the aftermath of the war, the region was left in a state of flux. Israel began building its new society, while Palestinians grappled with displacement and loss. The war created a refugee crisis that remains unresolved to this day, with millions of Palestinians still living in refugee camps in neighboring Arab countries. The 1948 war was not just a historical event. Its legacy continues to reverberate through the region, influencing politics, shaping identities, and fueling disputes. The 1948 war left deep scars and unresolved issues. Fast forward to 1967, a year that would further complicate the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Six-Day War, as it came to be known, was a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle between these two entities. It was a brief but intense conflict that saw Israel face off against Egypt, Jordan and Syria, all of which had territorial claims in Palestine. The war began on June 5th, when Israel launched a series of surprise airstrikes against Egyptian airfields. The Israeli government justified this move as a preemptive strike in response to the mobilization of Egyptian forces along the Israeli border. In the following days, Israel engaged in ground battles against Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula, Jordan in the West Bank, and Syria in the Golan Heights. The conflict was swift, lasting only 6 days, but the impact was profound. By the time a ceasefire was declared on June 10th, Israel had seized control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This expansion of Israeli-controlled territory marked a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape. For Palestinians living in these areas, it meant a new reality under Israeli occupation. It also led to an increase in the number of Palestinian refugees, as many were displaced from their homes during the fighting. But the Six-Day War did more than just change borders. It deepened the resentment and mistrust between Israelis and Palestinians, making the prospect of peace seem even more elusive. It marked the beginning of a new phase in the conflict, one characterized by ongoing occupation and a struggle for sovereignty. Israel's victory in the Six-Day War also bolstered its position as a regional power. It demonstrated to the world that Israel was capable of defending its interests, even in the face of significant opposition. The outcome of the Six-Day War further intensified the conflict, with both sides holding firm to their claims. From the late 20th century to the early 21st century, the conflict took some dramatic turns. The word intifada means uprising in Arabic. The first intifada began in the late 1980s, as Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip rose against Israeli occupation. It was a period marked by civil disobedience, general strikes, boycotts, and largely non-violent forms of protest. However, it also saw the unfortunate rise of violence and military responses. In the midst of these tensions, moves towards peace were being initiated. The Oslo Accords, signed in the mid-90s, marked a significant step towards resolving the conflict. For the first time, the Palestinian Liberation Organization formally recognized Israel, and Israel acknowledged the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people. The accords aimed to enable a peaceful coexistence, setting a 5-year plan for developing self-governing Palestinian institutions and withdrawing Israeli forces from Palestinian territories. However, the peace process was fraught with challenges. The Second Intifada, which erupted in the early 2000s, was much more violent than the first. This period was characterized by suicide bombings, airstrikes, and widespread violence, leading to a significant loss of life on both sides. In the midst of this, another significant peace effort was the Camp David Summit in 2000. It was an attempt to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it ended without an agreement. The failure of the summit was a major setback for the peace process, leading to disillusionment and mistrust on both sides. The peace processes and intifadas have had profound impacts on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They've shaped the political landscape, influenced public opinion, and left deep scars on both communities. They've shown the world the complexity of the conflict and the challenges of achieving a lasting peace. Despite several attempts at peace, the conflict remains unresolved. Today, the Israel-Palestine conflict continues to be a major source of tension in the Middle East. As we delve into the present, we find a scenario that's complex and multifaceted. The ongoing issues are numerous and deeply entrenched. Among them, settlement expansions stand out. This refers to the construction of Israeli homes on lands claimed by Palestine. These expansions are seen by many as a major roadblock to peace, as they are often viewed as a sign of Israel's unwillingness to make concessions for a potential Palestinian state. Next, we have the recurring issue of rocket attacks. These are typically launched by Palestinian militant groups into Israeli territory, leading to a cycle of retaliation that perpetuates the conflict. This cycle of violence is a stark reminder of the immense human cost of the conflict and the urgent need for a resolution. Then there's the status of Jerusalem, a city of immense religious and historic significance. Both Israelis and Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their capital, making its status a contentious issue that's central to the conflict. The city's future is intertwined with the potential for peace, with its status often seen as a litmus test for the feasibility of a two-state solution. Now, let's look ahead. The future of the Israel-Palestine conflict is hard to predict. It's a Gordian knot of historical grievances, political complexities, and human suffering. But despite the uncertainty, there are glimpses of hope. Promising peace initiatives are being proposed, and grassroots movements for coexistence are sprouting. Yet the path to peace isn't linear. It's a winding road, filled with obstacles, setbacks, and detours. It requires courage, compromise, and a commitment to dialogue. It necessitates a recognition of the other's humanity, a willingness to empathize, and a resolve to end the cycle of violence. As we step into the future, the path to a peaceful resolution remains uncertain, but the hope endures. Despite the hurdles, the quest for peace marches on, fueled by the shared dreams of Israelis and Palestinians for a better, more peaceful tomorrow.